Hello and welcome to TRA Snow & Sons install video on elevated systems. First we will require a few tools on this install: a chock line, an M6 Allen wrench which will fit our M8 bolts, our 7/16 inch socket, a torque wrench, and your tape measure. Once you have your required materials, you can then grab your Easy Solar clamp and install this onto your seam. We will measure the appropriate distance to make sure we are at our proper location, in this case 5 inches down, and put your teeth side underneath the hem. You will then torque this Easy clamp to 30 foot-pounds, after which you will grab your solar grounding clip and install this on top of your Easy Solar clamp. Again, verify that the teeth are under the hem. You will then measure your appropriate distance from your Easy Solar clamp to your next attachment point. In this case, we are measured at 6 feet of a rail span. These seams are at 24 inches on center. Continue 3 seams over. We will then measure down the appropriate distance as we did the first clamp, 5 inches down, and install to 30 foot-pounds. You will then install your elevated frame, which will be coming to you pre-assembled. Measure the bottom side hole to hole to make sure you know your adequate distance from your Easy clamp to Easy clamp. In this situation, measure from the top of your upper Easy clamp to the top of your lower Easy clamp, that same distance, and then torque down that lower clamp to 30 foot-pounds. Find your coworker or friend who can grab you or help you with your chock line, and measure and snap your chock line. You will then install your lower row of Easy Solar clamps. After your clamps are surely fastened, you will then install your frame. You will just need to set it on top, grab your M8 by 16mm bolts, and torque those down to 12 foot-pounds. After which you will grab your bracing. Your bracing, what is required is an M8 by 20 bolt and your socket head cap nut. You will then install these in all 4 locations on the back side of your frame. Make sure these are not too tight, for you will be tightening them a little bit later, making sure you are at your proper distance. After you have installed your bracing, you will then grab your cross connector. Your cross connector will attach to the top side of your elevated frame, making sure the L is facing up slope. In this install, you will require an M8 by 20 socket head cap screw as well, and torque this down to, again, your 12 foot-pounds. Continue to do this in all 4 locations on both frames. You will then install your power rail at the appropriate overhang distance that is located on your engineer layout to help prevent seams from lining up at your connection points at your cross connectors. You will then install or insert the sliding block into the channel and then torque it down with your M8 by 20mm socket head cap. In areas that are located longer than 50 feet, a flexible rail connector is required. You will then install this triangular shape, inserting into the power rail and sliding both together. You will then continue to attach same as required with your sliding block in with your cross connectors with your M8 by 20 bolt. With your lower power rail, you'll be installing this the same as the upper, making sure your appropriate overhang distance is correct, and installing the same fashion with a sliding block and an M8x20 bolt into the channel to your cross connector. After which you will be installing our fixed rail connector, attaching another rail or the end of a rail to the next end of a rail. You will install using 2 sliding blocks on each end, aligning them with your fixed rail connector. Simply snap in your sliding block, align with the 2 holes on the fixed rail connector, and then screw down with our M8x16mm socket head cap screw. You will require 4 screws in this application on each rail connection. After your fixed rail connector is installed, you will then make sure all of your bolts connecting to your rail from your cross connector and your cross connector to your elevated frame are torqued down to the appropriate 12 foot-pounds. You will then grab your weeb grounding lug and our weeb grounding washer and screw it into your sliding block at the end of each power rail. You will then grab your end clamp assembly and insert this or clip this into the top rail of your power rail. Align in your mid clamps. Again, these will slide back and forth. Insert these underneath your end clamps and loosely tighten these end clamps. Then torque and push in our mid clamps and torque down our end clamps to 12 foot-pounds. After aligning our panel into the appropriate distances from top to bottom, we will then slide this underneath our end clamps, making sure they are at their proper distances, and slightly torque these down to get a proper grip. We will then move in our mid clamps and as well torque these down to adequate size so we can torque the end clamps down to 12 foot-pounds. You will then install your next module on top of your 2 power rails and slide this underneath your previous 2 mid and end clamps. Simply lift up, shove in underneath our grounding washer, and then continue the process. Once you've installed all of your modules, you will then grab your end cap, align with the edge of your power rail, and simply insert into the power rail.